Getting your album reviewed used to be all the rage before the invention of streaming platforms. While this may no longer be the holy grail for most musicians, getting your latest release featured by the music press can still be a worthwhile endeavor. So today we'll be looking at the long-term benefits an album review can bring to you as a musician, how to find blogs that are worth contacting, and how to craft a well-thought-out email pitch. Towards the end of the video, I'll share my results and conclusions based on pitching my last 2 releases to about 50 different blogs. So stick around till the end of the video for that piece of wisdom. Make no mistake, this is a process that requires time and effort. So before we get into it, it's worthwhile to take a moment to try to figure out what goals we're trying to accomplish. For musicians who are just starting out with their first or second release, the possibility of having someone listening to your music and liking it should be an enticing one. Now this may sound harsh, but the chance of your friends and family enjoying your music are pretty slim. And this is perfectly fine if you're expressing yourself and making music that you enjoy, instead of doing it to please others or fit into neat little boxes. By sending your music out to people who are actively looking for fresh music in a specific genre, you'll get the chance to hear the opinion of someone who might truly appreciate what you're putting out there. If people are unfamiliar with you and your music, then simply telling them that your release is out there, available for listening or download, does not give them enough reason to actually listen to it. Let's be honest. With so much music and other entertainment freely available out there, few people are willing to put in the time and effort needed to truly experience something new and to allow themselves to be carried away by it. It's only once a credible third party enters the picture and starts saying things like, "Hey, this music is worth checking out," will a larger number of people begin to notice. And once those first reviews and features start coming in, be sure to share them on your website and social media channels. And so start building a reputation that has been independently verified. An added bonus is that being featured on blogs can improve your search engine visibility. The more websites that show your artist name and release name, the easier you will be to find. And if the music blogs are able to link back to your website, that's going to help increase your domain rating as well. Now, when it comes to finding blogs to approach, I'm not a big fan of the spray and pray method, where you play the numbers game and send out the same email to dozens or even hundreds of different email addresses and hope that some of it goes through. No. I prefer taking the surgical approach where I know exactly who I'm contacting and why. So let's break that down step by step. The first thing to do is to make a list of artists who make similar music to yours, but have already achieved some level of moderate success. Now, I'm not talking about bands that are at the peak of their stardom or who are filling stadiums, but are somewhere in between the mainstream and total obscurity in their specific genre or style. If you've done the networking phase, which I've discussed in my previous video on preparing an album release, then you've already likely come across a number of artists who fit this bill already. Take a look at their website and socials to see if they've already been featured on some blogs. And reach for the old Google search bar where you will cast the following spell. Now scroll through the results and take note of all the outlets that they've been featured on. In addition to that, I've also had some success with typing in artist names into Hype Machine and finding reviews that way as well. Once you've got your list of blogs, you'll want to do a bit more research on them, and at a bare minimum compile the following info on each of them: the genre or style that they cover, their domain rating and organic traffic. If you have access to a paid SEO tool, go for that. And if you don't, just pay someone on Fiverr or whatever to get you this info. It's worth it. And after going through their blog, take note of any artists and or releases similar to yours that they've recently featured. Now, you'll definitely want to use a systemic approach for keeping track of all this. And luckily, I've created an album release worksheet with just that in mind, which I'm sharing for free, link below. If you're just starting out with publishing your music, I wouldn't even bother with contacting the most popular blogs, which have tens or hundreds of thousands of organic visitors per month, and which regularly feature mainstream artists. Instead, I would focus on working from the ground up, and focus on building a relationship with smaller outlets and niche communities. Since, let's be honest, they'll be much more likely to feature your music. And if you have the time, by all means, do contact the big players as well. But just don't let that get in the way of the attention to detail you'll be putting in when you're crafting your emails. They say first impressions are key, and there's no firstlier impression when sending an email than the subject line. What I like to do here is give out all the key info without bloating it up. And maybe I'll throw in a relevant emoji, just so that the email sticks out a bit more in an overflowing inbox. Now, when it comes to the body of the email and the overall message, the key question you need to answer is this: why would your music be relevant to that specific outlet? If you've already compiled a list of releases that are relevant to your music that this outlet has previously featured, and it turns out that several of them were written by the same author, then why not address that person directly at the start of the email and mention which reviews of theirs you've particularly enjoyed? Otherwise, you can mention similar artists that have recently been featured on their blog and say a few words about how your release ties into all of that. But always put yourself in the reader's shoes and make it a short, interesting and informative read for them. If you're not a master of the written word and prefer to use ChatGPT or other generative AI tools, know that almost everyone will be doing the same. And the more you can differentiate yourself from the pack with personal touches, the better off you'll be. Just don't forget to include the album name and release date in the body of the email, even if you've already included it in the subject line. And perhaps even mention the first song they should listen to and why. Towards the end, you can throw down a link to your EPK for more information. And if you don't already have an electronic press kit, then watch my previous video on how to do just that. Now, different blogs are going to have different requirements on how you send the music to them. But it's likely going to be a combination of one or more of the following: a Bandcamp Yum link with a discount code, a YouTube link to an unlisted video of your release, a link to a private release on SoundCloud, or a Dropbox link to a zip file of your album in MP3 format. Be sure to add a call to action towards the end, where you invite the reader to review your music and get in touch with you should they require any more information. And it's never a bad idea to end an email with thanking people for their time, especially since what you're asking for them is to do you a favor. Send that out 2 weeks before release, but ideally do it 4 weeks before release so that you give people enough time to plan accordingly. And if you receive no response, it's usually okay to follow up a week or two before the release date, unless the outlet specifically tells you not to follow up on their submission page. If you're trying to work smarter, not harder, you're likely already making an email template that you can just copy and paste with every new email that you send out. But even then, be sure to follow the guidelines of each specific blog you're sending to and customize whenever possible. Well, that was a lot of work. And building up a dedicated listener base in this day and age takes a lot of work. Now, you've probably already heard about services that aim to bridge the gap between musician and blogger, such as MusoSoup, Groover, and SubmitHub. I've personally only used MusoSoup, and my take on it is that it's primarily built around getting featured on Spotify playlists, which is of no use for me because I don't put my music up on streaming websites, and I've made a previous video on why that is the case. Some of the bloggers that approached me on that platform spoke about getting my music featured on their websites that get a lot of traffic and on their social media pages which get mad engagement. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that very few of these websites got any organic traffic at all, and the social media pages that they manage, even though they have a large number of followers, they get very little engagement. That's just my experience, and I don't think it's enough to make sweeping conclusions. So let me know down in the comments if you've used any of these services and if you've reached some sort of success with them. It's also worth mentioning that most of the curators that you find on these websites will ask for a modest or not so modest fee to review your music, interview you, feature you, or whatever. Personally, I'm not in the business of paying people to review my music or to feature me. And if I was to invest money in promoting a release, I would probably just run ads or hire a PR agency to take care of the whole process. But for the time being, I'm doing this completely independently because I enjoy the learning process, and the only thing I'm investing is my time and brain power. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. How has this entire process worked out for me? I've sent out emails to about 50 hand-picked blogs for my album release in 2023, and I've gotten 2 reviews for that from websites with about 1,000 monthly organic visitors. And I've gotten similar results the previous year when I released my EP, contacted 50 blogs and got features from 2 other websites of a similar domain ranking and organic traffic flow. Now, I didn't pay for any of these services or the features, and overall I consider this process a success. And this is primarily because the reviews I've gotten were the best feedback I've received for my music ever. They were well thought out, well written, and it was interesting to hear how people perceive my musical stories on their own terms. So having said all that, what did I learn and what could I change when I do this for my next album or EP release? First of all, following up is a very good thing. If somebody said that they will feature your music on their website, it's not a bad idea to remind them of this fact about a week or 2 before release. 2. December is the worst time to release music. Now, this is something that I knew before, but I went through it regardless just to test out if it really is so, and I just wanted to put my music out there as soon as possible and get on with my other projects. I probably would have gotten a few more responses had I pushed up the release date by a month or 2 instead of wedging it in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And the third thing I learned is the importance of building relationships. Staying in touch with the people who have gone out of their way to listen to your music and review it is a nice and useful thing to do. As you can see, this is a fairly thorough process, which is why I've made an album release worksheet which you can download for free in the description to keep track of all this, make sense, and make this as smooth as possible for you. So grab that and check out my previous videos on releasing music, which will all be linked down in the description of this video. Keep making music and keep putting it out there. Ciao.